Hello everyone. For Channel 6 TV Community Focus, I'm Dennis George, and Kentucky General Assembly has been in session for 2 weeks now, and we have with us today State Representative Terry Mills for a little update on what's going on. And Terry, thanks for coming in to see us today.
Thank you for allowing me to do what I'm supposed to do, Dennis, and that's communicate with my constituents about what's going on.
Well, you know, probably in the first 2 weeks, the biggest thing that was supposed to come out but didn't was Jeff Hoover about a week ago standing up at the Chamber of Commerce and dinner and saying Monday will be an historic day in Kentucky. Nothing happened. Were there any discussions among the Democrats of what he was talking about, or was it just a comment that he threw out?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of discussion, not only among the Democrats, but all around the state, and in the media in particular. It garnered quite a bit of attention. I think Minority Leader Hoover thought at the time he made that announcement that some things were going to happen that ultimately didn't happen. But I really wish we, I kind of believe what we need to do is put our head down and go to work up there and start solving some of the problems. I wish we could eliminate that kind of distraction, overpower issues, and get down to work. But it turned out to be nothing.
Okay, was he expecting, it was too late for anyone to change party affiliation, was he expecting some Democrats to begin caucusing with Republicans?
I think, and again, I can only speculate. I haven't talked to Representative Hoover about it, and am definitely not in his head or in his caucus. But I can speculate like you and everybody else. He probably had a couple of scenarios in mind. They possibly could have offered some sort of job to one of the Democrats, hoping that would take them out, and maybe they got some positive feedback like that might be possible. Or like you said, they could possibly have talked some Democrats into caucusing with the Republicans and voting with them on some issues. So that, who knows what Representative Hoover was talking about.
All right, let's get into some issues that are going on. Obviously the big one every time you guys go back in is pension reform. And the Republicans in the Senate, I guess, have said, we're willing to sit down, but we do not want to give up our core beliefs. The Democrats, Speaker Stumbo, I guess, wants to come back and bond about $3 million. The Senate is going to want to do something else. Is anything going to happen in your mind?
In my mind, I think there's probably a good chance. I would rate it better than 50-50. When it happens, it'll be towards the end of the session after a lot of discussion and a lot of, I hope, compromise on both sides. But you're right, House Bill 1 in the House is actually our attempt to solve the pension crisis. It's the same bill that was filed last year. It involves bonding a little over $3 billion, which I hate. I hate that we would consider. The problem is nobody has a better solution. The pension system, in particular the teachers' retirement system, needs two things. It needs an infusion of cash, and it needs some long-term adjustments, what people refer to as structural changes. Mm-hmm. The House has proposed to infuse this cash, over $3 billion in bonding. The argument is interest rates are low, our bonding status is much improved from where it was several years ago, and that we could pay that off and get keep the system from having to sell off assets. They're actually selling off assets to keep it solvent now. The Senate last year didn't buy that. They offered some sort of compromise. It really was only a token. It involved, I'm not sure, it was a minuscule amount as far as these kind of things go. It was an amount that Speaker Stumbo, I believe, referred to as like spitting in the ocean and referring it to and expecting it to rise. In addition to some structural changes. Now, what I believe, personally, I don't think it's going to happen. I've been for expanding gaming. in Kentucky since I got elected. I believe we could pass a casino bill, dedicate the revenue or a major portion of it to the pension fund. When we get it in good shape, use that money for some other need, and that would solve the infusion of cash. And we also need some structural changes.
All right, so before, there's some other things I want to talk about pension, but you talked about casino gambling and using those funds for pension plans. But I noticed in either yesterday or today's Courier Journal, they talked about the lottery was supposed to go towards education. And in the last budget, 43 million out of the 225 million that came from the lottery ended up going to the general fund instead of to education. And they pointed out that people pay an extra $10 for nature license plates and are being told that money will go to conserve land. And $8 million out of that fund went into the general fund. Given how things have been in Frankfort, not necessarily you, but how does the General Assembly tell Kentuckians, you vote on this, the money will go here, and then it appears that when the budget gets tight, they rob those funds to pay other bills. I mean, can you comment on that?
Yeah,
and
I
know.
I can.
Okay.
I can. I'm not the one that does it, but
Right.
I'm there. And during the past few years, a lot of people refer to it as sweeping funds that are left over from various agencies, commissions, and designated areas. And there's a couple of ways of looking at it. If the state, the general fund budget is in dire straits, and if the money was designated to a certain place, and that money is sitting there and not being used, then personally, if that place where the money is designated to go has a surplus, then an argument can be made that it's really not needed to do what they do. So with that philosophy, or with that notion, I think the governor has taken those funds because of other shortfalls in the budget that are everywhere, other holes in the budget. So I don't like it, but I understand it.
Okay. Then getting back to pensions, I guess the Republicans in the Senate are talking about transparency. They are wanting pensions of legislators, basically for the public to know where their tax dollars are going once. Representative Yon says, what I get when I retire is my business and nobody else's. Is that another one of those differences between the House and the Senate, and what's going to happen with that?
It's a difference between the House and the Senate. I like transparency. What is it they say? Sunshine is the best treatment for a problem. And I don't think Social Security benefits are available to the public, and that's public funds, of course, taxpayer dollars.
But
So
we pay into that too, though. That 15% of my pay for years went into my Social Security. It could be argued I'm getting back what I put in.
Well, and that's the same argument you can make with pensions.
Okay.
We pay. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't mind if people know what I get. I mean, it should be transparent. I agree with the transparency notion. As to what will happen this session, I doubt anything will happen, because for those bills to get passed, you have to be able to get a consensus in the House and the Senate.
All right, given the 50 to 46 margin that the Democrats have with 4 special elections coming up, given the Republicans' view that the state of politics, that they can win enough seats in November to take over the House, does that mean that during this session there's going to be more jockeying around about positioning for November rather than trying to get things done, do you think, between leadership in both houses?
Will there be jockeying around? I'm sure there will. Just because of this election, it happens every election. Every 2 years there's a lot of jockeying around. As you stated, we have these 4 special elections, And that will decide what the makeup of the House is. If the Republicans win all 4 seats, it's 50-50, which would be interesting. And if the Democrats win all 4 seats, it'd be 54-46, as it was before we had the defections and the people take the jobs. And somewhere in between would be something else. So, unfortunately, there's too much jockeying around. There's too much politics. As I said before, I just wish we could put our head down. Elections are elections, and that's part of the process. I'm a Democratic member of the House. I want, and I believe we will retain control of the House. I know there's a lot of talk about flip the House, but talk is cheap. Work is what matters, and so we're going to find that out. But all that aside, I wish we could throw that aside and get down to solving some of the problems and dealing with the issues before us in this session.
Okay, and I notice one of your Democratic members, James Kay, is going to be filing legislation for term limits. I don't know if you've seen that or not. I've
heard about it, but I haven't seen the bill.
I saw something probably around lunchtime that he is going to be filing. I think it's 8 terms of 16, total of 16 for House members, 4 terms for a total of 16 for senators. You've been around for several years, and I think you would agree it takes probably 2 terms as a House member to figure out how to get from the cafeteria to some of the rooms where you have hearings, to learn your way around. I know that's simplistic, but understanding the process, it probably takes a couple of terms. But do you think at some point some people are too ingrained there and lose touch with what's going on, or the goal that is out there ahead of them?
You're exactly right. You hit the nail on the head. The only thing I'd correct you on is some of us slow learners could even take longer than to learn. I'm still learning, Dennis. But you're right. For me, which I was unusual when I went there, in that I'd only been to Frankfurt twice in my life. I didn't know the process, had never done any lobbying, didn't know anybody in the legislature, didn't know anybody that worked there, and so I was a complete green outsider. At this point, I feel like I know the system pretty well, but it's been 6 years. So you're exactly right. It takes a couple terms to really get a feel. I mean, I didn't know how to speak on the House floor. I didn't know how to file a bill. I didn't know anything really. And so it does take a while. With that said, I do believe you reach a point where you've been there too long. You become more about staying there than you do about doing the job you were sent to do there. Were I to file, I would support, and by the way, I think I'm going to ask Representative Kay if he can include making House terms 4 years in that. I would like that.
Well, and I think part of his bill is, instead of the House and the Senate drawing districts, that, as we all know, for the most part in the House, the Democrats draw districts to benefit them. In the Senate, they draw districts to benefit their majority party. And I think part of his legislation would have an independent commission draw House and Senate districts as part of his thing. But again, because politics also plays a part in trying to protect the seats of our members.
And I would support that. We do need an independent commission. And what you didn't say is that the House draws their lines, the Senate draws their lines,
right,
and then they fight, and then the court gets involved, and then that's how it really gets.
You went, one session they never changed because of the fighting, I think, a few years ago?
It could be. It took about 4 years we do it every 10 years. When the 10-year census is taken, the Constitution requires we redistrict. It took 4 years this time.
Well, I remember the ultimate, Senator Williams was upset with Kathy Steiner, someone in Lexington, and made part of her district in Owensboro, or it was something, and as we look at it, and I hear people in Springfield say, we're 10 miles from Jimmy Higdon, and Jimmy does a good job for us, even though he is not our state senator. but we bypass Washington County and give that to Tom Buford, who has really nothing in common with Washington County, but then Jimmy's going up to Jefferson County. And they would like to see, I think,
you could have many programs on the process of redistricting,
Yeah.
but basically the Constitution requires that each district, 100 of them in the House, has an equal number of people, and the other requirement is that the district by counties must touch each other. So, for example, I have Marion, Greene, and LaRue. I go through Taylor County regularly, but I don't represent Taylor County, and so. But if the more you learn about it, the more you understand and appreciate the difficulty of redistricting. Now, with all that said, we can create an independent commission to redistrict, but let me speak from what I know about life and what you know about life. You'll never take the politics out of it. An independent commission will involve politics, just like schools, families, companies have politics that go on. So you can never take the politics. Hopefully, though, it would be better than having elected representatives do it.
All right.